Hi everybody. All right, so episode 2, 12, 11, 12, something. Today what are we going to talk about? Yeah, whatever. Yes. Maybe. Anyway, so today is not about Star Wars. Today is about training. Don't worry, Star Wars is coming back next week. In honor of the sandbag carry at the CrossFit Games, today is about training. It's a Husafel stone. It's a Husafel stone carry, but Rogue is making them out of some kind of fabric. So it's a cone-shaped sandbag. So sandbag carries 200 meters, 200 pounds. Told you all to practice it. There you go. So let's talk about training. So on top of it, today I managed to do dumbbell rows with 100 kilos. Yeah, that's 220 pounds for you Americans out there, English speakers. So how do I need a 100 kilo dumbbell row? Of course I do. How can I live without that? That is not the point. The point is how do you get there? So I want to talk about training and protocol in that sense, because at the end, getting results out of those two is the same idea in a way. And we're going to do probably part 1, part 2, and part 2 will be like, okay, so how do I make it work for myself? Like no anxiety, like how do I stick to it, all that stuff. But first, let's get to how we can make it work. So there's a bunch of sayings out there that I think relate to this. So Bruce Lee famously said one time, I don't fear the man with 10,000 kicks. I fear the man who practiced one kick 10,000 times. Because that's what allows you to get better at it. There's a saying that is, to a ship with no port, any destination will do. Mm-hmm. Right. It's the same idea that you hear all the time, is that to get good at something, you need to practice that thing over and over and over again. And so if you look at my template, right, even if you haven't seen it, I'll explain, like you're gonna see me doing the same exercises pretty much all the time and back at it always the same way. So why? Because that's the only way you're gonna get good at something. If you see in today's world, we get a lot of information but very little wisdom. So, and if you pay attention, you will see that this is the only way they're selling you stuff now, is they just increase the amount of information that they send at you because they want to keep you distracted. That's the movies today, like Star Wars, for example, or Marvel, or anything coming out of Disney, is they throwing the kitchen sink at you. They're just throwing more stuff, more like tack, 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 tack. You know that even the porn industry does that now? You know that there used to be a movie you could see in movie theaters, porn movies at first, you could see in movie theater. There was actual story and shit, like in the 70s they made like, acting, the guy was the guy was a James Bond, like Boogie Nights, they made a movie about that, but he was like a James Bond and with his friend, and then of course he would fuck all the spies and stuff, but there was, because they realized that sex and all that stuff, like there's a story, you know, the mind has a play in it.
A build up.
A build up. Now you get, because they know they're going to get on a phone or a tablet, so he has to go immediate, so which means you get there, you got the stuff in your face. The question is, how do I get you excited the fastest? Yeah. Not the best, the fastest. And everything is like that now.
Yeah, I was going to say, everything is a bit like that, no?
So look at food. Food is salt and sugar, salt and sugar, salt and sugar, different flavors, and they bury you under it for as fast as you can. So what we are getting out of all this is a lot of information and very little wisdom. You know how wisdom is gained? It's the same thing as you getting good at exercise, and then again, we're going to apply that to the protocol, is you need to do the stuff again and again and again and again. So why am I doing the template that I'm doing right now? Is because it gives me results, but how do I get there, right? So if you see, for example, on the strength, like every Wednesday I do the dumbbell rows. Every Saturday I'm gonna do the dumbbell presses and stuff like that. But the key is you need to be, the importance with all this is I'm doing the same movement because then I get to understand the small variations, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
and I also think it's so, you created a certain type of baseline for yourself where it's easy to adapt to your needs specific, but you need some type of like structure base.
But
right?
It goes a little bit past that. What this is giving me is a chance to get better at something.
Yeah.
Right. This is not what most programming is. Most programming is to keep you distracted. Mm-hmm. Because that's the world we live in. And they know if they keep throwing new exercises and new stuff at you, you will not get bored therefore, because you don't need to put any investment in it, because they keep changing it on you in order to keep you captivated. But you have to understand, they're doing that so that they keep getting clicks on YouTube or on the stuff, or the programming is not boring, or like they're just keeping you interested. Yeah. The point of programming is not to keep you interested. The point of programming is to get you better at something. Exactly. If you get better, you're interested. If it's boring, make it not boring. Then we're going to talk about this. There are ways to do this. But the key is that you get exercises, you get really good at them, and you find a way to make them not boring by changing the rep scheme and stuff like that. So to go back to what Bruce Lee was saying, this is something that I learned from Jiu-Jitsu, but also watching and participating in sports at a high level for a very long time. Is that in Jiu-Jitsu, you see the top dudes, they have not that many techniques, right? They know most of them because they played with them, right? Because it takes years to get good at anything, but they actually don't have that many techniques. And then they have a little bit more setups, but not that many. So there's usually on the sweep, they have 2 sweeps, maybe 3, to reverse someone. Then they have like 5, 6 setups. But after that, what they have is perfect mechanics. That's the difference. Is like a guy that Gordon Ryan, who's the best grappler by far, what he actually has the same setups all the time. You see him going toward, he has 2 sweeps that I see him using constantly. And he has certain setups that he uses, but his mechanics of the technique are perfect. So he applies the stuff. So the work that he does is not on the fancy stuff, it's on the mechanics of it. That's what most people don't see. So you don't need the 10,000 kicks. You need perfect mechanics.
Yeah, and if you think, you also need time. You need time to be good at something, you know what I mean?
Right. So how are you going to get that time if you change exercises all the time? That's the thing. So if you take 2, 3 exercises that work well and you repeat them, and not once a week, like 3 times a week, then you're going to gain, it's going to become a craft. You're going to get better at it every time because you're not going to be able to forget it by switching exercises, because if you have 20 exercises to focus on, by the time you come back to the first one, you forget completely what you learned as you were doing it. If you have 3, and then if 3 is too much, you get 2, but then every time you go back to it, you go like, oh yeah, last time I did this. And then as you do it, and then you do it 3 times a week, so now that's that many repetition in the same exercise all the time, right? Which means when you go back to the exercise, you're like, oh yeah, I remember last time this was a problem, or this is, I did that and I worked better. Oh, last time I connected my left hand, it's so hard. And it's all those little things like that allow you every single time to get better at that exercise. And the point is that if you get better at an exercise, you get more out of it. People want to make results, they want more. Okay, but so what they do is they increase the number of exercises instead of increasing them getting better at it. So more is not better, better is better. So that's the key. I don't want you to do more exercise, I want you to get better at each. To do that, you need less of them, right? So
totally.
I love the conjugate system, but you have to understand, those guys, they were doing the same exercises, they're just in a rotation. It's the same type of exercise, they were just rotating them. That was the conjugate system. It's not throwing something new all the time. And again, when they say, oh, if you're going to give it a PR, do a different exercise, do chains, do stuff like that. Not on a consistent basis. On a consistent basis, what you need is to stick to the exercise that you know work for you. We're going to talk about that a little bit in part 2, but on the stuff that works for you, and then you're going to do it again and again and again and again. So why did I pull the 100 kilo on a dumbbell row this morning? First of all, because I have a very strong back. So, right. But how come I have a very strong back? Because I've been doing the farmer's carry into the farmer's deadlift once a week. I've been doing stiff leg twice a week. I've been doing T-bar rows, and I've been doing the deadlift rows. Deadlift rows now I can bang like 335, 365 on the deadlift rows. You know why? Because I've been doing it once a week, if not twice a week for, 4 months now?
Isn't it way longer?
Probably 6 to 8 months. You get the idea, right?
Yeah, 6 to 8, at least 8 months.
Right, so I started with 100 kilos. So I started with 220. Now I'm at 335, 355. Because I do them all the time. And now I learn how to get the tension. By the way, I learn how to get the tension and how to pull. And a benefit to that as well is when I do deadlift row, there is zero anxiety. I go into my training session with zero anxiety, fear of how much it's going to hurt always. But I have zero anxiety because I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And then it allows me to just focus my energy into it. Is it boring? It can be, then make it not boring, right? But don't train to distract yourself, or don't distract yourself to train. Stop just pummeling exercises because you get to the gym and you go, I don't feel like it. Let me do something new. No.
Well,
no,
that's the
no,
thing. You
discipline.
can't constantly do something new. That is just an illusion that you can't.
You
do
can,
that.
but okay. So, like for example, CrossFit introduces new stuff.
Yes,
By the way,
okay.
that's not true because you have the same 12 exercises. But
they are all the same basis. That's not
exactly. So
something new.
first of all, so it's not that. And if you throw new exercises all the time, then you have to understand you are a ship with no port.
Yeah.
So therefore, any destination will do. But then you have to accept something, is that your ship will go wherever the currents take it. That means that you don't get to decide where you end up. You end up with the body that you end up with, you end up with the imbalances that you end up with, the injuries that you end up with, whatever, and then you have to accept that as a fact and roll with it. Or you choose a destination, but then you have to set a course. Those are your two choices. Either you go with the flow and whatever happens, happens, like people that just play games on the weekend. All right, weekend warriors, we know where that leads to injuries every single time. But you don't like training, okay, that's fine, you don't have to do it. But you will go wherever the currents take you, and that's it. And that you have to accept as a fact. Most people cannot accept that because they're going to give you massive anxiety on the way there because injuries and stuff like that. If you want a destination, if you want to set a destination, as you should, then you have to plot a course. A bad plan is better than no plan. You have to plot a course and move forward. But once you get it there, then you have to accept that the way this works is a limited number of techniques for martial arts, a limited number of exercises for lifting and everything. And then you do them 3 times a week on a regular basis, 3 times or at least twice a week, and so that you can learn to get better at that exercise. Why? Because you're going to get a lot more out of it as you get better. So at first you won't get that much by doing it because you're still trying to figure out like where is my elbow, where is the stuff. But then as you move forward, you get better, you get less anxious out of it, you get more result out of it as you move forward. You become a craftsman. So the reason I could do the dumbbell row this morning with 100 kilos is because I've been doing the rows consistently now, but more importantly, as importantly, I've been doing the bicep and tricep opener 3 times a week for months now. So you know what it does? It sets my shoulder properly, which means when I lower the weight there, because I have the lat tricep connection from the tricep opener, my shoulder doesn't move, which means I don't have to bring it back into place with 100 kilo before I start pulling. Because if I do that, I lose so much momentum and strength that I can't lift anymore. And my body is going to freak out going like, we're not doing that with 100 kilos. Yeah. So to be able to pull that 220 dumbbell, which by the way, I love the gym for having a 220 dumbbell because that made me work harder. And they have a 240, which is next. Anyway. Then in order for me to pull, my shoulder has to, my body, my system has to feel comfortable, like my shoulder is not going to tear out of its socket. Know what I mean? So the tricep opener allowed me to have the connection where my arm is extended, which means the tricep lat connection is strong, allowing me to start the movement from there. And then after that, I need to be able to pull, which means the bicep pec connection has to also hold everything in place so that I can use my full strength while my shoulder does not do any micro movement that would put me at risk and therefore shut down the neural output into the movement. So for me to be able to pull a 100 kilo dumbbell, I need the neural output to do that. To get the neural output to do that, I need the muscle capacity. Tissue in the right places, right? That I created through first skill, the bicep and tricep opener. But I've done that shit for months, 3 times a week. Yeah. And now I'm getting the dividends out of it. But you know why I was able to find exactly where my shoulder is supposed to sit? Because I've done the same bicep opener, the same tricep opener again and again. So we done 3 sets, 3 times a week. So that's 9 sets of the bicep opener, of 1 bicep opener. And then we do 2 of them, by the way. So that's 18 sets a week of that. And then there's a tricep opener, which we do for 3 sets. So that's 9 sets of that at least every week for months on end, for 6 months. Then your shoulders are in the right place and you can start pulling. But you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so that's what it takes to be good at the dumbbell rows. Like there is so much work. And then after that, there's the dumbbell row itself, which I've done for years, where you need to understand like how to engage properly and all that stuff.
Yeah. So what was the course that you set for yourself when you started to build this new template? Because you have created a new template and new way of doing things with the systems work and everything. I found it a very incredible process to watch, but
right. So I wanted to become a better coach and better at programming. I was like, all right, so can I find a way to put all the stuff that I've been working on together? Because then I would, if I can't put it together, I can't prove that it works. If I can't prove that it works, why am I doing all this? At some point, you need to go, hold the phone, let me make it work. To show to yourself and to others that the stuff works. Otherwise, why are we doing this? Like at some point, the shit has to be there. Otherwise, it's Disney with fucking Star Wars saying, we did the show. I'm like, yeah, but it sucks, so who cares? You know, like you have to do the stuff, right? And so I was like, all right, so how do I put all the stuff that I've been talking about into one thing? Well, my specialty still is getting stronger. I was like, well, then let's see how I put all that together in a system that allows me to get stronger. But I'm gonna have to prove it. So I'm older now than I was at my peak, but can I get past that level? Because if I can do it 10 years later, then I can prove that the programming is better now than it was then. Because it's not 10 years later, 20 to 30, it's 10 years later, 40 to 50. So it's the fact that I can still make that much progress in my 40s, my late 40s, is a proof that the programming is working well, right? So I was like, all right, let me put all the stuff together, because if I was right about all the stuff I've been talking about, the programming will end up being better. And I was like, to do that, I need to get stronger to show that the stuff works. And so I was like, all right. And then I knew I needed the assistance work, because I need the assistance work not to break. That was also a big part of that. It's like you can't be in pain, because I don't want to be in pain anymore. Maybe I was accepting that in my 30s. I'm not accepting it now. Now I just want to be able to train and make progress, but not pay the price on a daily basis, constantly having shoulder pain, back pain, and stuff like that. I just don't want that. So I was like, all right, so let me put all the programming together. And then it's forcing me to every time go to reassess stuff. And the first thing that I reassessed, it was understanding that I was doing a lot of movement without knowing why. I was doing tricep press down, I'm like, why? So at some point I'm like, because like the template is a high volume, so I'm like, if I'm gonna put my energy into doing exercise, it better give me a lot, because otherwise what the fuck am I doing it for? Because it just takes energy for nothing. Then I realized that when I was doing this, what am I doing it for? And there was a bunch of times where I couldn't answer you. Because like a tricep extension makes you stronger on pressing. I'm like, okay, how? Because which part of the tricep? Because you're not really feeling it. And so suddenly I was like, yeah, I'm feeling it, but I'm not seeing that big of a difference. Like, I know it takes time, but at the same time, like, I'm not feeling the cramping. I'm not feeling is it a pump, but is it like that good of a pump? Like, where am I taking this? And I realized like a lot of the stuff, well, no, maybe not most, but a lot of the stuff were in that center, that, you know, like that gray area where I was doing it, but yeah, whatever. I was like, well, but that exercise, I feel it really well. Like every time I can tell, like dumbbell rows always give me big lats, like the T-bar rows. And then T-bar rows, I feel in my glute med. I was like, oh, so that's interesting. But then there was a bunch of exercises. I was like, those ones don't really give me anything. I don't get that big of a pump. I don't cramp in the muscle. They don't seem to make me especially stronger. I was like, so why am I doing this? I was doing this because going to the gym, I wanted to distract myself for the fact that I was at the gym. I was like, that's a losing mentality. So suddenly I was like, okay, then fuck it then. I'll take everything out. So what do I need? I need the bicep and tricep opener. I was like, all right. So I started playing with cable for weeks and then months. I was like, that's working well. And then by doing the bicep and tricep opener, I was like, all right, so how do I take it one step further? Then I started to superset the tricep opener. For example, I was supersetting the supinated with a pronated. I was like, oh, that was a good pump. And then I was like, if I'm just going to do that, how do I take it a step further? Well, I remember I used to be cable pullover, and then okay, so add that. And I'm like, oh, I feel my tricep more. All right, and then eventually I did the pronated cable pullover. And now I get that spot where my tricep and my lats engaged, starting to burn like crazy. I was like, well, that's interesting. That's a new sensation. And I know I always had a weakness in that area of the tricep. I was like, well, let me push that. And then 4 weeks in, as I'm starting to really burn that lat tricep connection, I'm realizing my shoulders are getting stronger. I was like, well, that's interesting.
And then feeling it better.
Right. Suddenly I started feeling it better on the bench and better on the deadlift too, by the way. Because now it's actually getting my form on the deadlift better. I'll explain a bit more about that. And so, and I'm like, well, that's interesting. And so I keep pushing it. I'm realizing like, oh, that spot is right below my rear delt. So as I'm doing the rear delt, I'm like, let me just do the same exercise. So I do that. And then that exercise, I'm like, how do I push it further? Well, I superset it, but so is it better 10 reps? Is it better 14 reps? And before you know it, I'm starting to understand that that exercise for me is better at 15 reps with the superset this way and then every single time. And so I'm getting a better pump every time, a better connection every time. And because I made it work for me, because I spent the time to go like, do I do 12 reps, 14 reps, 16, and then I just keep working the stuff so that I get a better connection every training session. And I realized that the first 2 reps, usually I start slow. By the 4th, I'm a little bit faster. And then by the end, I'm almost like winging it like Ronnie Coleman style, like very explosive, like shorter reps, just trying to get the maximum speed out of the movement in a way to target the muscle. So I found a way to basically make the movement work every little time, a little bit better.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's less boring every time because I'm better at the movement every time. So now I made it not boring. Just like a craftsman, like, you know, like those Japanese craftsmen who can do the same job for 40 years, like, oh, you know, like that documentary, the Ramen Head, you know, that I show you, or Jiro, A Dream of Sushi. Is like the guy at 85 still say, I learn about sushi every day. It's the same 10 dishes he sells every time. So it's not that, it's how you do it that matters. So it's not what you do, it's how you do it. More is not better, better is better. So don't distract yourself with new exercises, with stuff. Find the one that are necessary for you to do and do that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm sure from sprinting it was the same idea. The drills lead to the same place.
Absolutely. Like, honestly, the more I think about it, the more I start to realize like what training was the best. It was the most basic stuff, the most basic drills, the most basic sprinting, over and over and over and over and over again.
So make it not boring.
I did the same thing for 8 years, 6 days out of the week. So I prefer that type of training personally. I think you do, because like you have time to develop.
You have to get better at it. Mm-hmm. And I think the idea is daunting because you're gonna go, oh, I'm gonna get bored. I'm like, all right, well, let's make it not boring. I'm not saying you should do 3 sets of 15 reps, but maybe you can superset it. Maybe you can, and by the way, there's also the assistance work, but there's also the lifting at night, the carries, the stuff like that.
And I think also things become less boring as soon as you realize the importance of them and what you get out of them. Like as soon as you start to feel those tricep connect on the bench, you go like, oh,
that's why I'm doing it.
That's why I'm doing
it.
And that's why I think the combination of the morning and evening is so rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
And also, like, by the way, how do you get bored carrying a heavy sandbag for 50 meters? Like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not bored. I'm dying, but I'm not bored. Yeah. Going into a max weight yoke carry.
Well, if I'm being honest, like at first when we did the assistance work, I might have said
off the record
that I found it boring, but that was my own mistake. It's because I was not invested enough in that training session. When I started to invest more in it and started to really try it, superset it, drop set it, up the weight a little bit, like invest in it, I was like, oh,
yeah, because you see results suddenly.
Right, and you see results and you start to enjoy it. And like honestly, if you go hard enough, things start to get boring really fast.
But so make it not boring.
Exactly.
Right. You know what's not boring? Getting better at something.
Right.
What's not boring is a PR.
You know, it's not boring, not hurting. You know what I mean, like just like
no,
that
but,
is
but
not
plus, like, if you're not bored because you get a PR on different exercises, again, you are distracting yourself. This is just ego then, because you do a new exercise, you get a PR. Who cares? Is that what you're lifting for, to get a PR? That's ego, that's all.
Well, that's why I think it's so cool. For example, in powerlifting, you have 3 main lifts. Like, there is a reality to it. Like, are you getting better? It's like
Right.
with the sprinting, for me, it was like, okay, this is a time, this is 100 meters, it's always the same. Like, are you getting better? I think it's a good measurement, you know.
Right, you have
once
that
in a while.
instrument, you have the
Yeah.
deadlift, you have, it's actually, it looks like there's
Yoke.
more stuff in the strongman, but it's really the same 10
Yeah.
exercises.
It is.
Right, like for example, like Olympic weightlifting, all that stuff, it's the same movement all the time, but you just keep, so even when the conjugate system came from Olympic weightlifting, it was the same type of exercises. You would snatch off a block or stuff like that, but the fact is, it's the same movement over and over and over again, because that's the only way to get good at it. Like,
Yeah.
so it's, understand the differentiation between information and knowledge, right?
And that's a good point you're making. Yeah, right?
They are pushing more information all the time. But understand that this is a selling mechanism. This is not to make you better at anything. They're just trying to keep you hooked so that they get clicks or wherever it is. Whenever you see those videos, especially like by science, the base bicep curl, bullshit. You know what the base bicep curl is? Is the one you've been doing for years with the same stuff, trying to get better at it so you get the most out of it. That's the best bicep curl for you, because if you do the same stuff and 3 times a week for 3 months and you don't see any result, then you know that exercise is not for you. Then you move on to the next one and to the next one. Like that's just the way this works.
Yeah.
By the way, along the way, you're gonna find that there are ways that are just not your way, that just don't work for you. Yes, that's gonna happen too. You're gonna spend 3 months doing 3 times a week something to discover that for you it doesn't work that well. Yeah.
But sometimes, honestly, I think it's underestimated how important it is to realize that something isn't for you, right?
And that experience you're going to take to the next one,
Right,
which
and
is
you
you'll
always
benefit
know.
from it no matter what. That's just the way this works.
It is true.
Mm-hmm.
I think as long as you invest yourself in it, it's always worth
You're going to
it.
learn.
right?
You're going to
Yeah.
learn something out of it that you'll be able to use on the next one.
Right.
Jean-Jacques Machado was talking about that. He's like, study the technique, because even if it's not for you, that technique you will use for that one technique that you will use all the time. That's the thing, is you're going to end up with actually very few exercises that work for you, very few techniques or whatever. But your mechanics have to be perfect. So no matter what, even when you saw a technique that was not yours or an exercise that wasn't yours, you've learned mechanics out of that you will be able to use for that technique that is yours. So at the end, you're still learning. But the key is that repetition is primordial.
Yeah.
And because I wanted to talk about a protocol about that too, is in a way, it's the same thing. So it's even, for the food, it's the same thing. Like, we never had access to that much types of food in the history of the world. But the thing is, and again, it's even more important with food, is, for example, the gut flora. You heard me talk about it so many times, right? The gut flora is 100 trillion bacteria, and then there's viruses and microbes and everything in your stomach that has a profound influence on your behavior. The enteric nervous system is called the second brain for a reason, the heart being the third. It has a vast control on such things like socialization, like stuff like that. It is a brain that you have in your stomach. That brain, imagine a biological machine, right? A computer. Except instead of having the chips or whatever, you have colonies of different bacteria, and each colony seems to be dictating a certain types of behavior. The way you change the composition of the gut flora is through food. So that means that by having certain foods, you're going to promote a certain colony of bacteria that will result in a certain behavior, probably a certain feeling. It will change your hormonal levels, things like that, for many, many different reasons that I covered in other podcasts. But so every time you introduce a new food, you upset the balance established, which means you upset your behavior, you upset how you feel about the same things in your environment and stuff like that. So imagine being thrown constantly different foods, different flavors, different composition of food. You will keep your system guessing, yes, but not in a good way.
Yeah.
We were never designed to have that many foods. If you look at the history of the world, you had a very small number of animals to hunt, right? And throughout history, if you look at the history, for example, of agriculture, you had either wheat or rice, or so you had one form of grain, maybe two. You had 4 or 5 animals in the best case that you used to hunt. You know, a few fish, maybe birds, maybe, but it was actually a fairly limited number of foods.
And then you also had seasonal fruits, by the way.
Right,
so,
and seasonal animals too that you
yeah,
could.
exactly.
Right. So you were really on a timetable of a certain way of eating based on your environment. We are upsetting that constantly through the introduction of food. If you want to get, like, I don't care if it's losing weight or upping performance or whatever with a protocol, it's a bit the same idea. Is you need time to establish what a food does to you from a feeling perspective, behavior, like affects, and so you need to have a limited choices of food. Like honestly, if you want any diet to work for you, and the protocol in the case of Strongfit is have a list of food at home, and you decide this is the list of food of the stuff I want. We're going to take out the stuff that is anti-inflammatory for you. I'll talk a bit more precisely the next podcast, but we're going to take out the food that are inflammatories to you, but then we're going to establish a list of the food that you want. We're not going to make it to 50. We're going to keep it somewhat small. And then for 8 weeks, all you're going to eat is what's on that list. Why? Because you're going to start to go like, oh, when I eat this way at that time, I feel this way. When I eat that time, I feel that way. That's why protein at night, once you're used to it, once you're 6 weeks in, you'll notice that you crave the protein at night. And based on how you feel, you crave a certain type of protein. If you train heavy and hard all the time, you're more toward like the red meat or stuff like that. If you want fish, that means you're in a very specific. Just by doing that, manipulating your dinner, you will notice that the type of day that you had will make you crave a different type of food. Mm-hmm. Right. That's the relationship I want you to have with your body and with food. And then we're going to have that list, and that's all you can eat is one on that list. You know, another very important thing out of it, if you don't want to eat on that list, you're not hungry.
Yeah.
Because I got news for you. I don't feed you for 3 days. Whatever is on that list will sound amazing. So at that moment, if it's not on the list and you still want to eat it, you know it's a fix. You're not hungry. You need to get distracted. Maybe you're bored, maybe you're tired, whatever it is, but you need to distract yourself. You will notice that based on the fix that you're looking for, you're looking for a specific flavor.
Yeah, and the thing is with distracting yourself too is like, it can be a dangerous thing though, because it can make you not want to see certain things or not want to face certain things.
That's why it's a fix.
And the thing is, it's going to bite you in the ass eventually. You know what I mean? The more you delay it, the harder it's going to be as well.
Right. So it's a fix, and you don't want food to be a fix.
Yeah.
That's a bad place to put it. So people will go, well, it's boring to eat always the same thing. Then make it not boring. You know what's going to happen?
I do not understand.
Autistic people is different.
When you said it, I'm like, that's such a foreign idea. Like.
Right. But at the same time, like, you look at that list. We're not saying you can make it taste good. So if you're bored out of sweet potatoes, cook them better. Cook them with a little bit of butter. Put a little bit of salt. Do it like. Make them taste better, then you won't be bored. And if you're bored eating it, that means you're not hungry.
Well, and it's the same thing with like, there's so many variations. Like, I think it's also like the more you enjoy like making the stuff and like being invested in like, oh, let me put a bit of lemongrass pepper or some mozzarella instead of normal cheese or whatever it is, right? Or some extra salt or this. The more you invest in a process, the more you enjoy it. That's how I experience it.
By the way, cook it better. Look again, Jiro, a dream of sushi. The dude sells the best sushi in the world. People come from everywhere just to taste his sushi. Right. It's rice and a piece of fish on it. And maybe he puts a little bit of salt. That's it. If you can make that taste amazing, then anything can taste amazing. It is not about food anymore. Difference between information and knowledge is the same. So like food is very dangerous as a fix. It's very dangerous as a comfort mechanism. It's very dangerous as a reward mechanism. Like you don't need, you don't need to put sugar in whiskey for whiskey to taste great. Maybe at first it's too strong because you're not used to it. But as you drink, not that you should drink whiskey, but you get the idea. You will discover that there are certain flavors in it, but it takes time. It takes a palate. Like your palate changes over time because you learn to taste different things. Like you have French cheese and only the French can eat. Because to everybody else it's too strong, you don't taste anything. But we used to it, like I was a cheese connoisseur actually. I know it's what's such a cliche. But for me, like the blue cheese is never the same.
I'm not gonna say
Blue cheese is,
anything.
to people, blue cheese is blue cheese because it's so strong, but that's not true. There's very, very different type, and some are more salty, others is like, you feel it in your palate, some you can almost smell it as you eat it, but if you know how to approach it correctly, you can find a very subtle difference in taste, even from the region where it's made and stuff like that. It's all that matters, but it's a matter of investment into it. It's a matter of taking the time and not going like, I'm bored next. Then it's TikTok. That's what it is. So you don't want to train the TikTok way. You don't want to eat the TikTok way.
That's for sure.
You know what I mean? Like that just constant distraction. Understand, it's exactly like TikTok. They are selling you something. They are keeping you distracted to keep you on the app. That's the point of TikTok, right? Because more people on the app, more ads, more money for TikTok. That's how they make money. Well, the YouTube way is the same. So that's why they say science or the best bicep curl or whatever. To you, it makes no difference whatsoever. The best bicep curl is exercise that allow you to stretch and contract your biceps the best way, and that you do often until you get good at it. That's the best bicep curl for you. I like the bicep opener because it gives me a better stretch, a better contraction, and it translates better to the press or the pull or whatever. So we can have that conversation, which one would be a better exercise to put your energy toward.
And then
we can have that conversation.
Yeah, but then you can do a high cable bicep opener, low cable bicep opener.
And we can have the conversation about that. But no matter what, understand that this exercise, no matter if we say it's better than the other one, makes no difference to you if you don't do it 3 times a week for so many sets for 6 months. That's just the way it is.
And not just doing it, like feeling the movement while doing it.
Right, but at first you're just gonna do it. But then eventually you're gonna go like, if you keep doing it the same way, you're gonna go like, all right, so I'm doing this, but I don't feel my biceps, how come? Then you start to notice your elbow is in the wrong place, and then your hand is not doing that. And then as you get better at it, you start to develop the connection, and then we move forward. And I mean, and then you go like, you know what, I get better connection in the 14 rep range than I do in the 10 rep range. Right, you know when you're gonna discover that? 6 weeks in.
Yeah, well that's a bit like the time frame I think is interesting too. Like, I mean, like how long did it take you to develop the template the way you did now? How long did it took you before you found your version and stuff like that?
But look at the burn the question workout. You know what it is? It's a rope pull and a sled press. It's a sled drag, it's a harness, and it's a sled sprint. It's the same lowest exercise every time. If you're bored doing those, you're not doing it right. Because they never get better. They're just as painful now as they were the first time I did it.
I still find that amazing. Like every time you walk in, you go like, well, I just have to surrender
I'm gonna
to
die.
this.
Yeah, I'm gonna die.
I'm just gonna have to,
And every single time, your soul bleeds if you push hard enough, if you commit to it. So it's not about fighting, by the way, and it's not about fighting like God in a sled push either, but it's like, just keep pushing, don't give up on exercise, and you know what getting better at exercise means? It means you can take more punishment while doing it.
Yeah, but I mean also like it takes also a while before you know if something works for you, if not. Like if you talked about assistance work, like certain exercise,
for example,
you need to do it. You need to give it a shot. You can't say you do it one time, oh, I didn't feel anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's something that I've learned, and where I still sometimes like make a mistake where I'm like, oh, it's not working, or I'm too short and I throw it out.
Not
no,
yet.
you have to give it a moment to, your body get used to it, like stuff like that. Like it takes
because you have to
time.
make it yours.
That too.
And then so you need to be a craftsman in that sense. It just takes time to develop certain skills. So again, we can have the conversation, is this form of the bicep opener or a bicep curl, which one gives you the best? And then we can talk about the mechanics of the movement to see if it applies to the press or whatever. I think the movement that I chose are better, and I'll explain why in the next podcast. But at the core level, you have to understand that none of this matters if you don't put the work in. And it is not about just understand that it is not about distracting you. It's about you, in a way, surrendering to the exercise, you investing yourself into an exercise until you make it work for you, because you will not get good result out of an exercise until you get good at it. To get good at it, you have to do it time and time and time again. It's not the number of hours in the day, it's the number of seconds that matters. It's the number of minutes that matters. It's how committed are you to that exercise? Enough to do it for like 2-3 sets, 3 times a week, and trying to, you're making a ristretto. You're trying to get the most out of the flavor of the bean. You're not making an Americano, right? You're trying to get the flavor out of the exercise, because every little subtle differences make a difference at the end. But it's so much work that way. But in the meantime, this is why I pulled the 100 kilo dumbbell for 4 reps this morning, because of the work I've done on the biceps and tricep opener, on the work I've done on my obliques lately, on the other work on my back, and finding the right technique and the right that's what led me to the 100 kilo this morning, which I've been chasing forever. I didn't think I would get it even. But then suddenly I'm stronger. Why? Because of that work. But understand, I do the same exercises 2 to 3 times a week. So actually I have a very limited amount of exercise that I use. So why do I use them? That will be the next podcast.
Yeah, also we have to talk about them gains.
Yeah, well I'll talk about that too, because I'll be more precise about the protocol and how I transformed it for the present shape, for my present form. It's my gorilla form. So you'll notice that's a Super Saiyan reference.
I was guessing it. I didn't want to.
They have the giant ape form. That's my current form. And I will explain how I get to that form on the next episode. Bye, everybody.